signing in, please, if you are going to speak tonight. We'll talk about that in a moment. Make sure you put your name and your address.
The meeting is starting.
All right, I call to order the June 12th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Vernon Planning Commission. It's tradition of the Planning Commission to start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, Ms. Hildebrand, will you please call the roll for the Planning Commission?
Chair Anderson.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith. Here. Commissioner Hoffmans.
Yes.
Commissioner Brody.
Here.
Commissioner Pond.
Here.
Commissioner Semendalis. Absent.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sigmund. Absent.
Thank you. Okay. Let's turn to the May 22nd meeting minutes that are before us and were in the packet for review. Are there any questions or changes, commissioners, to the May 22nd Planning Commission minutes? Comments, questions, changes? All right. If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 22nd minutes.
So Commissioner Brody makes the motion to approve the minutes, and Commissioner Hoffman seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and those, aye please.
Aye.
Okay, any nays? I do have an abstention since I was not here. I would ask that you record my vote on the minutes as an abstention, please. All right. We have one land use application for public hearing tonight, and it has multiple parts. So let me provide some procedural background before we dive into this. The members of the Planning Commission are volunteers, and like many of you in the audience, we're Berthoud residents. Our duty is to review application materials provided, hear public testimony, hear from the applicant, and then discuss the matters before us as they comply with the Land Use Code review procedures. In doing so, please note that the code and other regulatory prescriptions provide certain criteria for approval that we must consider. We have staff in attendance tonight to provide us with presentations of the land use items, to lay out the criteria and the parameters for approval, and to answer the commissioner's questions. Once the staff has completed their presentation, the applicant will be permitted to provide information about the application. After that presentation, the public hearing will be open. If you intend to speak during the public hearing tonight, please come up, though, and some of you already have done that. Please come up and sign in on the sheet at the front of the room. We gain insight from the information and viewpoints the public provides. Your input is very welcomed and appreciated. If you wish to speak tonight, you will be recognized by me. When you come to the lectern, please provide us with your name and spell any uncommon names so the record will accurately reflect your comments, and then provide your address. We ask that you keep your comments relevant to the matter being discussed, and we ask that you direct your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. You will have 3 minutes to speak. As stated tonight, we have one land use item to be heard that has multiple parts. To recap the process, note that staff will introduce each item, followed by a presentation, and then the applicant will make a presentation. After that presentation, the public hearing will be opened, and this will be when members of the audience are welcome to speak. For the particular land use item today, there are 3 requests for our consideration, but we will only go through presentations and public hearing once. Okay, to begin the more substantive part of our agenda tonight, we will start with the staff presentation. This item is the River Trails annexation, neighborhood master plan, and rezoning. For our audience, note that the annexation will be first, and if we recommend approval of that request, we will move to the neighborhood master plan and consider it. And if we recommend approval of that request, we will move to consideration of the rezoning request. Ann Johnson, Director of the Berkeley Community Development Department, will present the staff report on these items. Ann. Ms. Johnson?
Chair Anderson and members of the Planning Commission, you did go over some of the process for this evening. We have individuals in the audience that might not be accustomed to the process, so I'd also like to offer a graphic depiction of the process for land use planning. One of the first items that applicants go through is a pre-application process. They are gathering data, they are looking at the property, they are having pre-application meetings with staff, as well as other agencies such as the school district, or Larimer County, or Weld County if it's a project in Weld County. And then they're preparing their application materials based on the facts and the data that they have received from their engineers and from others. They submit an application and staff reviews that application. We also send the application to agencies such as the fire district and the school district and Larimer or Weld County, as well as our operations staff, the Division of Natural Resources, the Geologic Survey. We'll send it to the Army Corps of Engineers, other organizations that might have an impact or be impacted by the development. Then we receive all of those comments and we provide them to the applicant. They have an opportunity then to address those comments and the concerns, and they resubmit an application. And then we go through that cycle again until everybody's concerns are addressed. At the time that the concerns are addressed, then we schedule a time for a public meeting. And that's where we are tonight on these three items. Should these items be approved this evening, then the post-approval actions include going to the Town Board of Trustees, any special district notification, annexation agreement, and then they would file a preliminary plat. The preliminary plat is a stage where technical details are worked out. So tonight, Chair Anderson, you did go through this process, and we'll just go through it again. Staff will make a presentation. What we're talking about tonight is the process. How was the process followed? How were the master plans, the comprehensive plan, and the development code, were they followed? Were they not followed? And then what are the criteria for approval? After staff provides a presentation, then the applicant will provide a presentation as well. Then you'll close the applicant's presentation and you'll open public testimony. Public can come to speak, and as you indicated, Chair Anderson, there is a sign-up sheet. And once staff sits down, we will take that sign-up sheet up to you, and then you will call everybody by name. So if anybody wants to speak, now is a good time to sign up. And then you'll close public testimony, and then the applicant has an opportunity to rebut what they've heard, to answer your questions. You may also direct any questions to staff. Staff is not a wildlife expert, and there are a lot of questions raised during the last hearing, as well as some of the neighbors have brought up concerns. So we do have Peyton Fellholter. He is the district wildlife manager for this area. Now, he is not here to speak for or against the project. He is here just as a subject matter expert in case you have questions. And then after that, then you will discuss and vote. So again, where we are in this land use planning process, it's at the very beginning. We're here to talk about, is it in the best interest for Berthoud to annex this property? If it is determined that it is in a good interest to annex this property, then we'll take a look at that neighborhood master plan to see, did they propose a development in concept that follows master plans, the criteria for approval, and proposed zoning? And then after that, if you determine that, then honestly, approving the change of zone is a very simple process, because that change of zone, you've just approved the future use. Then next steps are the preliminary plat, along with 80% construction documents. And then if those are approved, then the final plat with 100% construction documents, the development agreement, and then any site-specific land uses that may be needed. This particular site is not proposing anything that would require step 4. All right, so let's start this out with our comprehensive plan. In the comprehensive plan, it states that there are vision statements, there are goals, and that there are intended objectives to be met, including having buffers between sensitive areas such as wildlife, having beautifully designed streets, tree-lined streets, having diverse neighborhoods with lots of different housing types. So the underlying map on this screen is the town's comprehensive plan's future land use map. And this map establishes a vision of what land uses could be appropriate as the town grows. And the act of annexation is a way to increase the town's mass, how big the town is. The large mass of green has been envisioned as undeveloped lands, and you can see that it goes along the Little Thompson corridor on the south side of Berthoud. The colored portion of the map represents envisioned land uses, including residential and non-residential uses. And you can see where this proposed project is. It's in an area that is highlighted for suburban residential, and that has a maximum density of about 17 dwelling units per acre, per our current code requirements. So through the town's comprehensive plan process, the town envisioned that these properties are being appropriate for suburban residential, open space, and agricultural uses. While the comprehensive plan and the future land use map are not legislative, meaning they're not law, they are a vision document. And the proposed zoning is consistent with this future land use map, adding to the rationale that there may be interest for the town to annex this property. So the applicant is proposing an overall density of 3.68 dwelling units per acre, where the current comprehensive plan has envisioned this, it could be up to 17 dwelling units per acre. Now, taking a trip back in time, this is the comprehensive plan map for the town of Berthoud from 2014. So the one most preceding what we have today. And at that time, even in 2014, the property was envisioned for medium density residential development, which is 3 to 8 dwelling units an acre. And again, this application is proposing 3.68 dwelling units an acre. So this slide illustrates the 2022 Trails Master Plan, and you can follow that green arrow and the approximate location. And there is a regional trail along the river. It's in purple. It's very light to see. And then also there is a neighborhood trail that's in orange that comes down south on First Street. So this application is incorporating some trails, the regional trails, as well as the neighborhood trail on the east side of First Street. This is a 2021 open space master plan, and as you can see, the river corridor is illustrated in green for preservation, and this application did pay attention to this map. And then you can also see, even in that open space master plan, the gray area north of that river trail area is noted for future development. Now there are 2 properties in this River Trails project, including the approximate 98-acre parcel which is shaded, and then there's a little 9-acre, 9.5-acre parcel that's just outlined in blue. The shaded property is what's slated to be suburban residential, and then the smaller parcel is slated for zoning for agriculture. The location is on the east side of County Road 15 and south of County Road 6. It is south and east of Heritage Ridge, and it's a 1/4 mile south of Mary's Farm and Farmstead 1. Now, the town did purchase the approximately 150, 160 acres just immediately south and contiguous to this project. And then Future Farmers of America are located on the east, those two larger parcels there. Future Farmers of America site does have a conservation easement. The site that the town owns, the town has no plans for development of that, and with the intent of preserving the agriculture heritage as well as wildlife corridor there. So surrounding uses include rural residential subdivisions, agricultural operations, and a large part of the area is currently in unincorporated Larimer County. These are the same photos that you saw several months ago. This is approximately 800 feet north of the intersection of 6th and 1st Street looking south. Heritage Ridge is on the west side of this slide, and it has an elevation of 50-50. The northern portion of the River Trails property is at an elevation of 5,000. So there is a difference of 50 feet between those two land elevations. The properties on the north side of Road 6C are between 30 and 50 feet higher than the property on the south, which is where this project will be, is proposing development. And the source of that information is from USGS maps. So this is at the intersection of County Road 6C and 1st Street looking southeast across the property. This is at the intersection of County Road 6C and 1st Street looking east. This is on Road 6C looking west from the approximate northeastern property boundary looking back west. Now this is on 1st Street at approximately the southern property boundary looking north to northeast across the boundary. So the distance of surrounding property owners to this River Trails project, this is to the property line. It's 270 feet to Heritage Ridge, and then it's 400 feet to the properties north of 6C in unincorporated Larimer County. This is our current zoning map, and it illustrates where this project would fit into the context of our existing zoning. So you can see Heritage Ridge to the west, and that is PUD, which is the density that was developed there is very similar to R1 or suburban residential. The property to the north are Mary's Farm. The property to the northeast, which is Fickle Farms and Farmstead, are R2 zone districts, which are a little bit more dense residential development. And this is the revised site plan or the neighborhood master plan. Again, they were originally proposing more than 420 lots, and they have reduced it to 344 lots. The applicant's going to provide you with more details, but they listened to the public, they listened to you, they listened to the town trustees, and they did resubmit their application. So there are 4 different styles of residential units which are required per our code, and they have proposed that. There are 8 subdivision identity elements which are required, and they have proposed those as well. Again, this is a conceptual plan, and all of those elements will have to be ironed out and up to 80% construction drawings at the time of preliminary plat. Now, you've also seen this, but just as a reminder, The property is currently in unincorporated Weld County, Larimer County. So the column on the far left represents land uses that are currently allowed in both Larimer County and Berthoud. Then the next column is if it were to be annexed into Berthoud, there are just 4 additional land uses that could be allowed. And of course, those are through either site plan or special use permit process. And then to the right, or the right half of the page, these are all land uses that could be applied for through Larimer County that are in addition to what we would allow. So the town would not even consider these. And of course, there is a land use planning process, both in the town of Berthoud and in Larimer County. So these are not guarantees, it's just saying what the code has identified as appropriate. So let the record show that these next 3 slides, this one included, it provides details on the criteria for approval. These details are in your packet. The packets were available last week online. Anybody can take a look at the packet and these details are there. So this is annexation criteria, annexation review criteria. This slide shows the neighborhood master plan review criteria. And this slide shows the rezoning review criteria. This particular slide condenses and just summarizes the criteria, so you have them on one slide. So should you want to have this slide up when you're doing your deliberation, staff is more than welcome to pull that back up for you. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on process or the comp plan or the master plans that you saw some slides on. And then I do know that the applicant is also here and has a presentation prepared for you.
Commissioners, questions of staff?
No.
Slides you want to look at again?
All right, thank you.
Director Johnson. The applicant? Please state your name and address.
Right there.
That's good for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'll get out of the way.
Thank you. My name is Jim Burrisall. I'm part of the ownership group. With me tonight is John Turner, also part of the ownership group. We appreciate the opportunity to be back in front of you. Thanks to Ann for the staff presentation. I wanted to just highlight a few things, and specifically the changes that we've made in the plan since it was in front of you the last time. And I'll go a little bit quickly just because you guys have seen this and seen it relatively recently, a few months ago. So if you have questions, obviously, you know, we can go back. But as Ann mentioned, it's located above the Patuxent River. As Ann mentioned, we bought the entire property, including the property that was sold to the town. And that was part of the business model that we purchased the property under, was the understanding that the town would purchase a portion of the property for open space, and then the balance of the property would be developed in a way that was consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, codes, et cetera. And Ann can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've met all of the criteria of the town. And I think we've addressed all of the comments and suggestions from all the referral agencies as well. And some of those are reflected in the revised plan that I'll talk about tonight. We presented this the last time, but I think it's worth sharing. And Ann mentioned some of the uses that are available to us if the property were to not be annexed and we were to develop it in the county. I think it's fair to say that this property will be developed in some form or fashion, either within the town or within Larimer County. Our preference, we've done a lot of work in the town. We feel like we have a great relationship with this community. I live here, John is soon to live here. We've been investors and partners with the town on various projects since 2005. So our strong preference is to do this project in town. That's our selfish desire for a whole host of reasons. But we also think that we can achieve a better project if we do it in town. Whether it's developed in the county or the town, it will be connected to town water. It will be connected to sanitary sewer from the town. It will be using town streets. It will be connected to the town through sidewalks and trails, et cetera, whether it's within the town boundaries or not. We think it's good planning to do it in town. And that's obviously why we're here. That's why we're here for a second round, even though we were tabled with our first proposal by the town board. So we feel strongly about that. We think it's better, and we think it's better planning to do it in the town. This is the project that was presented to the town in an executive session, presented to the town board prior to our purchase and prior to the sale of the property to the town for permanent open space south of the river. This project had significantly higher density than what was presented to you last fall, and has even less density, or our new plan has even less density than what was shown to you then. So there is a financial impact, and I'll go through that in a second, but a significant financial impact to us as the property owner and also to the town as we continue to reduce density, and I think it's important for the town to be aware of that. Staff asked us to prepare a physical impact analysis, which we've done, which I'll show you in a second, which is very interesting. But the premise of this project from the very beginning, even before we purchased it, was that we would bring the north part of the property to the town to be annexed and developed in town. As you can see here, similar layout, much higher density, much closer setback to the river, but similar concept. 4 different product types, a mix of attached and detached single family, all for sale. This again just sort of highlights sort of how it's situated, as Ann mentioned, east of Heritage Ridge, just south of Mary's Farm, above the Little Thompson River. So this slide just sort of highlights how much trail and open space we are providing. So we have just over 4 miles of sidewalk. In addition to cooperating with the town on the trail on the south side of the river, we have almost a mile of trail inside of the project. And then one of the big changes is along the river corridor itself. The plan that we had presented to you previously met the town's required setback to the river of 150 feet. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife had recommended 300 feet. And that was one of the suggestions from the town board, was to go ahead and meet that 300-foot recommended setback, which we have done with this new plan. So you can see here the blue line on this plan that kind of follows the river is that 300-foot setback. So we meet that in every case as a minimum and exceed it in most cases. This slide just sort of highlights our concepts for the park. To go back a second, we think this is a really incredible opportunity for this neighborhood, but also for the community to have a nice neighborhood park that is larger than what would be the minimum required, that would provide access to the town trail and to the river corridor. That would be provided by this project, wouldn't have to be provided by the town. So this would be a great way to launch the town's trail program with this as a trailhead and a nice open space with a lot of amenities adjacent to the river. So again, just a sort of a highlight of our plan, and I'll talk a little bit about the changes here as we go. These slides were highlighting the wildlife corridor, and I believe we presented these to you at our meeting last fall. And it was really intended to highlight that I think the town and the Future Farmers of America made really smart decisions in the purchases of their open space. I think those plans that Ann presented, the open space plan that goes back, I think it was dated 2021, but I think it's reflected by plans previous to that too, that the south side of the river is much more open, much more unobstructed by fences, houses, neighborhoods, etc. And so that open space that the town purchased, and again, the property to the east, the Lewis Farm that the Future Farmers of America acquired, is the right side of the river. That's where the trail should be, that's where the primary wildlife corridor is. So I think those choices that the town made are very smart. And I can go through this in more detail if you have questions about it. So this plan, the red lines are the original plan that was presented to you guys last fall. The colored plan is what we're presenting or proposing to you tonight. The changes, the primary changes are a significant reduction in density on the north side adjacent to County Road 6, which was intended to address concerns from the neighbors that live to the north, and a lot of them are here tonight, and I'm sure you'll hear from them. And then to address the width of the river corridor, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, at the suggestion of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. In addition, let's see, so the open space went from basically 25% to 35%. So we increased the amount of open space by about 10%, a little over 10%. And then you can see in that green triangle, kind of to the southeast corner of the project, that is property that we own that is on the south side of the river that would be directly adjacent to both the town's open space parcel and the Lewis Farm Future Farmers of America parcel. And if we're successful in getting this property annexed, we would dedicate that property to the town. So that way the town's trail wouldn't have to do some strange jog around this property. They could just follow the river because our understanding is the intent of the town is to have the river basically follow the trail to follow the south side of the river. So we think that's a great benefit to the town, and it just makes a lot of sense for us to go ahead and do that. And then this slide just highlights the number of residential units. So the original pre-app plan, which was the one I showed you, which was presented to the town before we bought the property, had 646 units. The plan that was presented to you in the fall is 426 units, and the plan we're presenting to you tonight is 344 units. So as you can see, we're respectfully reducing the density to address the concerns that we're hearing from the public, from you and from the town board. So this just highlights the parcel that is directly adjacent to the river. You can see the yellow dimension is the 300-foot minimum setback. The average setback from the river is 525 feet, and the increase of this particular parcel is about 20%, just over 20%. Again, respecting the concerns that we've heard from CPW and from the town board. This slide highlights the changes along that northern property line along County Road 6. So the original proposal showed 103 lots there, and we've reduced that to 36 lots. We've also increased the size of the landscape buffer between the road and those lots. If I remember right, the original buffer was 20 feet, and this one is 50 feet. So we've increased that significantly. One other change that I think is maybe small but could be beneficial to those neighbors to the north, the original plan had alley-loaded product there that fronted onto County Road 6. So you would have front doors, sidewalks connecting out to that local street. And this plan turns those lots. So the back of the lots would now back to that. So you wouldn't have that landscape interrupted by sidewalks. It could be landscaped. The entire space could be landscaped. And we're happy to work with the town staff to get a good buffer there, so it really does buffer the residential from the neighbors. So this begins to get into that financial analysis of the impacts to both the town and to the project as we reduce density. So this slide is what we call one-time revenue. So it's revenue that happens predominantly at the time of building permit. So the original, let's see if I can find it here. Okay, so sorry, this is the pre-application master plan that shows annual revenue and one-time revenue. So, the one-time revenue that comes as a mix of impact fees that comes to the town for trails, parks, some of that goes to Larimer County, sales tax, et cetera. So the original pre-application plan, contributed $24 million to the town as one-time fees, and then annually would contribute through property taxes, et cetera, $4 million. The plan that we presented to you in the fall, the one-time fee revenue is $15 million and the annual revenue is $1.7 million. The plan that we're presenting to you tonight, the one-time revenue is $12.7 million and the annual revenue is $1.5 million. So you can see that there's sort of a fiscal impact to the reduction of density. And again, we prepared this plan in response to the town's request. So this is just sort of a side-by-side comparison of the three different plans and their fiscal revenue. So that's the summary of what I wanted to share. Obviously, if you have questions or if you want me to go back through any of that information, I'm happy to do so. And again, just appreciate the opportunity to be back in front of you and talk about our project again.
Questions, commissioners, for the applicant?
What's the land currently being used for right now?
So the land that's being annexed, let me see if I can go back to. So this slide, so on the very south edge, you can see that there's a rectangle that doesn't have color on it. So that property is being annexed and the proposed zoning of that is ag. That is the old original farmhouse and farmstead. And it really is pretty lovely, well-maintained, and pretty historically true. So our thought is to keep that basically in its existing condition. When we are through with our engineering and make sure that we don't need to cross that for a utility line or something like that, then our plan would be to put that onto the market in its existing condition and have it zoned ag so that the development potential is very limited there because we think that it's a beautiful, beautiful farmstead. The portion of the property that we're preserving in open space, a portion of that is farmed. The majority of that is farmed, but some of it that's directly adjacent to the river corridor is what I would consider to be floodway that drops off. And so you've got beautiful trees, wetlands, wonderful wildlife habitat along the river corridor. And then the balance of the property, all of the property that we're developing into residential is farmed.
It's currently active or something like that?
Yep, I think they have it in alfalfa, or a portion of it in alfalfa, and I think the balance may be corn this year, so.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Yep.
I have a question maybe from the town. So I see there's going to be a trail along the river. Is there any connection that passes under the railways to connect the east part of Burton?
Yes, Commissioner Hoffmans and members of the Planning Commission. That is part of the overall Trails Master Plan. And if we go back to that particular slide, eventually there will be connectivity. So you can see the orange are neighborhood trails, either developed or to be developed. And then you can see purple, which is the regional trail. And there is an intent to connect it from our western urban growth boundary all the way to east of I-25.
At that level, so just down at the south part of the development.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you, Mr. Merzel, can you show us again the difference in the density? I saw that the map that showed kind of in red shows what it used to be.
Yeah. The pre-application plan, which we presented to the town in a pre-application meeting, and then that same plan was presented to the board in an executive session that we did not attend, but we were told about after the fact from staff. That plan had 646 lots. The plan that we presented to you last fall had 426 lots, and the plan that we're presenting tonight has 344 lots.
And again, the distance to the nearest home from the river would be how much under the new?
The nearest
plan?
rear property line to the river is 300 feet.
So it's 300 feet, and you said the average was,
Give me a second.
I think you said 325, I wrote down, but.
The average is 515 feet.
515 And the distance from, let's say, the rear of one of the homes that would be on 6C to the nearest home across 6C, do you know what that is?
So Ann, I may lean on you a little bit. I think you presented 400 feet, and then we would have the width of the road, which is 60 plus the 50-foot buffer, so 400 plus 110, so 510 feet would be the nearest home to the north. And it might be noted too that the homes to the north are significantly higher in elevation. And I presented to the town board that it's really rare for us to present a project where we're not blocking somebody's view. And this really is unique because we're not. There's no homes to our east that have their view blocked by this development. The homes that are nearby are all above us. And that, again, is very unique and I think fortunate for the neighbors, so.
Homes being planned here, do you envision these being two-story homes or?
I think predominantly two-story homes, because they're on smaller lots. And the market is telling us, especially when you have to meet the 4 product types, the smaller lots, in order to meet the demands of the market and have an adequate amount of square footage, they tend to be 2 stories. I don't think it will all be 2 stories, and I think some of the larger lots would probably be more likely to be 1-story lots. But I think the smaller products, the duplexes and the townhomes, and the smaller single-family lots would most likely be 2-story.
So on 6C, under this plan, those would all be single-family, correct?
Yes.
And what's the average lot size?
So those are 50 feet by 115 deep, so 50 feet wide and 115 feet deep.
On average.
So yes, on average, some of them, like as you go around the curve of the street, tend to be bigger, but not significantly bigger.
So I would guess what we're seeing in that are smaller, in the middle there, are those townhomes?
Those are duplexes.
Duplexes.
Yeah, and then the townhomes are, I don't know what color you'd call that, the darker brown or darker tan, where it says Pocket Park.
Pink, it's pink to me.
Or pink, yeah, maybe so. Yeah, so those are the townhomes. And we intentionally did that where we put the higher density product in the middle of the project. So it would have less impact on the perimeter land uses, including the neighbors. So we intentionally did that to try and be more sensitive to the neighbors.
What types of elements do you envision for the park? I'm just thinking from a wildlife standpoint, obviously, we want to make sure that those wouldn't be a problem for them.
Yeah, and to me, this park is I think adequate and pretty good. But what I would really like to do is work with staff as we work on our preliminary plat and with Planning Commission and the town board about what that park could be. I mean, it is directly adjacent to the river. We're hoping that we can connect across the river to the Towns Trail, which would be on the south side of the river, and that this really could have a unique aspect to it where it really does feel like a trailhead, a launching point for this neighborhood, but also for the greater community. We have parking planned on street and off street so that people from the other parts of town can drive down here and utilize this park, utilize it as a trailhead to launch the river and the river trail. I will readily admit that we have not put an adequate amount of thought into what this park could be. The intent was to make sure that we met the town's code, and the code is somewhat definitive, I guess, in the amount of elements that are needed. And we just haven't taken it to the next level. But that would be something that would be a goal of ours for the preliminary and final plat, is to come up with a park design in conjunction with the town's park staff, planning staff, that could really be something special. And I really think that that's an opportunity for all of us, this neighborhood, the neighbors, the community, to create something that's very unique and very special. To my knowledge, the town doesn't really have any other good access to the river yet. And the river there, although not big, that river is in their normal flow is, I don't know, 7 or 8 feet wide, but it's beautiful. And the trees on this property, and I should have brought some photographs, but the trees on this property and the river corridor itself is relatively untouched. The farmer did a little bit of armoring of the bank to keep the river from eroding their fields, but really minimal. And the rest of that corridor is untouched, and we are not planning on touching it. So it really is a really unique opportunity for the town to have a piece of that river corridor that's now available to them to enjoy. And we're pretty excited about it.
So has there been any thought given, I know this is very preliminary, but making the park so that it could have educational elements about the wildlife there, and about the history of the river, the Thompson River, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, and we've talked with Ann, for a hot minute about that. And as, like I said a second ago, I feel like we haven't given it its due attention yet. Our focus really has been making sure that the plan itself meets all of the requirements of the town, and all of the referral agencies, et cetera. And I think we've achieved that. But, when we get into the preliminary plat, knowing that we're annexed, knowing that we have a plan that's viable, is when we can start digging into that sort of level of detail and make it better. And I know Ann has been politely pushing us to do better, and I expect that will continue. So, yeah.
I think you mentioned at one point in your presentation that you had addressed some comments from referral agencies. I was wondering if you could give a little more detail on that, specifically if there was any from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Sure, yeah. So the Colorado Parks and Wildlife reviewed this prior to our hearings with you guys last time. And I believe we had met all of their suggestions and requirements except for the 300-foot buffer, which was a recommendation, not a requirement. And the officers here, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But our understanding at the time was that it was a recommendation, not a requirement. We hired a biologist to do an ecological characterization study, which is required by the town. And our ecological characterization study and our biologist opinion said that, because the property within sort of the difference between 150 feet and 300 feet was historically farmed, very low habitat value, that meeting the town's requirement was adequate. So that's what we proposed. And so through feedback from the neighbors, feedback from the town board, after we had gotten your guys' recommendation for approval, suggested, well, we should meet that 300-foot setback. So that was the big change between when you saw it the last time and when you are seeing it today. My understanding, based on reading the CPW recommendation, is that we have now met all of their requirements and recommendations with this revised plan.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, commissioners? One question I had, have you had any, since the town board meeting, have you had any interaction with any of the neighbors? either Heritage Ridge or to the north?
So, if I recall correctly, one of your conditions of approval or recommendation of approval was to have a neighborhood meeting with the neighbors. We offered that, we scheduled a room, we sent invitations, and nobody came. And they had indicated ahead of time, very politely, that they were not gonna come, and they didn't. And so, no, we haven't. We tried and it didn't work out.
Questions, commissioners?
Can we ask questions of our wildlife
I was just
officer, or is
gonna-
that later on down
is
the
it-
road?
Is it possible for us to ask? our wildlife?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you please approach the podium and state your name and address, if you're willing?
Yeah, as Ann said, my name is Peyton Felser. I'm the district wildlife manager for Berthoud area. I'm happy to be here and hopefully I can answer all your questions for you.
I guess my question was, on the crops that are grown there, I obviously understand the residents' concern, but are these crops turned over every year, or is this I'm assuming there's disruption of the soil and habitat during planting and turning over crops and.
So I'm going to defer that to some of these neighbors over here. They live right across the street, and to be honest with you, I started here in January.
Okay.
So they would have a better inclination of that whole process throughout a calendar year than I would. So unfortunately, that's my best answer for you regarding that.
Would you confirm the recommendation that 300 feet would be, from the river is sufficient as a setback?
Yes, that is our regarding wetland habitat and riparian areas. We have a benchmark of 300 feet buffer that we recommend for these applicants.
We received some information from the neighbors that indicate that some endangered species might exist or migrate through the area. Does that trigger any kind of regulation from either Colorado Parks and Wildlife or federal agencies?
The federal agencies, United States Fish and Wildlife Service. I have heard people talking about the possibility of boreal toads being in the area, as well as the Preble's meadow jumping mouse. I was given a document that these neighbors put together. I was able to take a look at it. Unfortunately, from the photos, specifically the mouse, it was difficult to tell exactly what kind of what species it was. So for Preble's, they have a really large rear back feet and a really long tail. So roughly their overall length is 10 inches, and about 7 inches of that is their tail. And the picture that I did take a peek at, it was very difficult to tell. I couldn't give you an answer 100% certainty on that. And then as for the boreal toad, it's known that they're not found in elevations lower than 7,500 feet. And they are found in alpine meadows, spruce and Douglas fir forests as well, close to water. So it is they provided me an image of that toad, and it's most likely a woodhouse toad. It does have that white dorsal line similar to a boreal toad, but this proposed project is out of their historical range.
If those types of species did happen to be there,
Yes.
would that 300-foot setback and as the area as it is be sufficient to support?
So they are federally regulated species. So personally, I cannot comment on that. We would have to defer you to the Fish and Wildlife Service, which I've provided Ann with a couple contacts. She's been able to finally get in contact with a couple of them. So we would have to defer those concerns to them.
And do you have any
Yeah,
information
you don't
from Fish and Wildlife?
The representative Liz Darling and I have been exchanging voicemails and we've not been able to speak. However, she is aware of the town board of trustees hearing date and she was aware of this hearing date as well. We've just not been able to connect.
Any other questions of our wildlife expert. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I do have our comment letter on this application. If you commissioners would like to take a peek at it, I'd be more happy to hand it up there to you.
Please. We're at the point in our meeting when we would like to open the public hearing for comment. So let me go through the rules again. If there's anybody else who did not sign this list, please let me know, and I'll give you an opportunity to sign it, to testify. When you come, I'm going to call your name, and when you come to the lectern, please state your name and address. Folks didn't add their address here, so I'm going to ask you to say your address pretty slowly, and I'll write it in for you. So with that, let me start with the first person on the list, and that is, and please forgive me if I don't say your name correctly, Emmett Culligan. Correct me if I'm wrong, is that?
Yeah, that's right.
You will have 3 minutes.
Hello, Emmett Culligan, live on 20 acres along 6C. And I'd just like to say that, so much of this, interaction where towns are growing can be some, very adversarial, and, there's a lot of growing pains. And I would just like to say that I think, speaking personally and from a lot of the neighbors at 6C, we are not inherently anti-growth, okay? And also I'd like to tell Turner that we're not necessarily, we actually, I think that, developers, it is a business, and they have to hit certain numbers in order to do certain things. They do provide a great service of, providing homes. Back in 2014, when the town drew that, inner core, I think Little Thompson River was a logical place to put it. Could they have fast forwarded 11 years to see where we're at today, where we've got 20-acre, 5-acre agricultural use properties along 6C? My question to you is, have you actually, and would you please take a walk down that road? This is a gem. And this is not about, blocking my view. This is not about that. This is an opportunity for all of us to work together to try to prove what we already have. We've got Future Farmers of America, beautiful place. It's going to preserve that parcel in perpetuity for the farmers, for the future farmers of America. We have the south part that Turner sold to the town. And we have 92 acres of riparian beauty and a traditional farmland. Why can't we work together in some fashion to preserve this corridor right here for the town, for the future? I think we just need to admit that in 2014 we couldn't have foreseen this, because if you look at the plan from a bird's eye view, you will see that it's sort of schizophrenic. I mean, you've got density, and he went from 700 to 460, okay? But the people on 6C, we're not going anywhere. We all have cows, we have farms, what are we gonna do when? So I just implore you to really think about this, because we are not anti-growth. I mean, put 1,000 homes right up there on 56. I mean, go for it. This is not the place.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is David Hirschman.
Hello, I'm Dave Hirschman. I live at 224 East County Road 6C. So I live right I live right on Spring Hill. There's a Spring Hill Lane, but Spring Hill Road got named after the whole north side of 6C, which you can see from this plan is all wetlands. I can't build within 200 feet of the road because it's wetlands. It's gonna be very expensive to put in a road, remodel this road. The county just improved the road, but they wouldn't pave it because it's too expensive to do it, because you have to take care of the wetlands and the drainage. The proposed housing is way closer than 300 feet to these wetlands, I can tell you that right now, even when it's across the road. And, you know, you can say that this is farmland, but I've got foxes, we've got elk, we've got all kinds of critters that cross between our farmlands up on the top. They cross that corridor to get down to the river, and they're not gonna be able to do this if you put 350 houses. You've got wetlands to the north, you've got the FA farm to the east, you've got open lands to the west, and railroad tracks to the west, and you're gonna put 350 houses right in the middle of this beautiful place. There's land for sale out west, build houses out there. Build houses on the highway, not on the river. This corridor, it gets smaller. You know, you're not gonna be able to tell the animals, oh, you guys need to stay on the south side of the river here. Put up a sign for them or something. He talked about how beautiful it was down there on the south side, and build houses on the north. You're blocking the corridor. And I proposed that the master plan was flawed back then. We're more concerned about wildlife than we were back then. And for good reason. 300 feet is not enough. You're blocking the corridor. You want to have it pristine all the way out to I-25 and all the way up west. And then you're taking and you're building houses right up next to the river. And the master plan needs to be changed. I realize they're conforming to all this stuff, but it just isn't right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Emily Harrison. Thank you for having an easy name to say.
Emily Harrison, 84060. Emily Harrison, 84060.
Thank you.
Kind of on the heels of that, and I think what everybody wants to really come across and let you know what it's like to live in that corridor, which to me or to us might be from 6C to 2E. And there's a lot of proposals and prospects for that area, and rightly so, because there's some space. However, I'm a year old there, formerly from Fort Collins and Longmont over near 66, kind of on the county line. And my backyard is the county line and up to Farmstead, which is where they're building, and you know, it makes sense there. Not really thrilled about it, but it makes sense, and it's good for the community. But being new to this community and meeting the folks that have tenured these areas has been incredibly interesting. Everybody's incredibly astute and very savvy to the lifestyle of the rural living. And this is kind of in a pocket of a rural area and a wildlife corridor. And our property, I mean, just my first couple weeks as a resident on 6C, the sort of the ecosystem that I noticed with the landscape, the trees, the water, and there's like an ecosystem. And just even trying to talk about it as I met some neighbors throughout that time, I mean, it is a very special place. And the builders know that, and they're from here and live here, and they appreciate it too. And we appreciate the situation of being able to say that this might be out of place. Because when I came up here, I spoke to you and I said, we got to figure out what to do, because we just got this notice. And it got translated to meet with the builders, but I think what we needed to was talking to the town and sort of have a conduit to the town. And we really didn't have questions about builders and building. I think a lot of us are in the industry. We are. So the wildlife habitat is incredibly active. It is disturbing. It just seems really off. And this being placed right there, again, not against building, but this area has got its own sort of, it's a valley and it goes up to the other hillside, which is 4E or E4, and then to 2E, and it's just, it's an interactive sort of community as far as everybody has acreage. These are acreage properties. These are rural acreage properties, and this is kind of smack dab in the middle. And I'm feet away from the Little Thompson River, and there's a ditch line, which is the Rockwell ditch that feeds into it, and it kind of circulates that, and it's really important for us to keep that water flow and maintain it. So all these acreages are maintained by everybody in the capacity, and we're used to that lifestyle, and we look to be living in that lifestyle. So this sadly disrupts it. I mean, it being placed anywhere would be great, but it's just a
Ms. Harrison, your
disruption.
time's up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, now I am gonna probably butcher this name. And is it Rita Jacobson?
Dr. Lisa Jacobson.
Dr. Lisa Jacobson, I apologize.
No worries, I wrote like a doctor.
I wonder why it looked like prescription.
But you couldn't read. I'm at 332 East County Road 6C.
Thank you.
And all of my neighbors before me have said everything that needs to be said. That area is like an extension of Estes Park. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, one of my neighbors texted me and said, "Look out your front window." And there were 4 young elk out there, out in our fields, and they jumped the fence and then went across 6C, and then they stayed down on the Turner Birdsell property for most of the day, just hanging out there. We have one of the great joys every Thanksgiving is the thousands of geese that come in. And they leave shortly after Christmas. And it was kind of interesting this year because after the town meeting, after that was stated, within days, we got awakened by gunshots, and no one's ever hunted there that we know of in at least 20 plus years. And after this was brought up at the town meeting, they built blinds kind of as close to the road as they legally could, as close to the neighbors, and just started shooting geese, which was interesting. And interestingly too, for weeks afterwards, we found dead geese on our property, which we've never found ever. So that was kind of interesting. But anyway, that was kind of an interesting, interesting way to make friends with the neighbors and make friends with the town. And interestingly enough, the town board had asked the developers to investigate the animal wildlife, and that was kind of, I guess, their response is, we'll stick up our middle finger and kill the wildlife, and everyone else will run away from gunshots, I guess. It was a really interesting response, I thought. Anyway, the wildlife's amazing, absolutely amazing. And people are always walking their dogs up and down our road, up along 6C. And it's really sad to think of it being disrupted, and to think, I just cringe at the animals. I know dollars are more important than animals, I understand, but it's still extremely, extremely sad and heartbreaking to me that all these animals are gonna lose their habitat. So, thank you. I hope you can reconsider. And yes, please take a walk down 6C one morning, just take
Sure
one.
that I live right there, so I have.
Oh, you know, okay.
Okay, next up is Rick Stoner.
I got a little stopwatch here, so I'll watch myself. Again, I'm Rick Stoner. I live at 333 Spring Hill Lane. My wife Joyce is here with me tonight. We lived here 38 years on that house. I knew Mr. Beefus. I knew when he told me how he bought the property. I watched over his irrigation I moved pipe with him. I know that property. Mr. Beefus never wanted it to be turned into a development like this, I can tell you that. And let me address a couple of issues. I sent letters and a summary of photos of the animals that we see in that valley. I'm here to speak for them. I don't care about anything else. Nobody is speaking for them. You might as well take a gun, as like Lisa said, go out there and shoot them all, because that's what you're gonna do. It's 300 feet on either side of the river. It's nothing. We saw eagles chasing geese out there the other day, 2 pairs of eagles feeding in there. We see coyotes, we have bears, we have elk, and we have moose. We have everything in the developer's plan. They said that there's only antelope in the valley. Well, that's not true. And speaking of the Preble mouse, that isn't the Preble mouse. That's the New Mexico jumping mouse, which Colorado, and I stated in here, I can't remember, it was 2004, 2014, designated that mouse as an endangered species. And I've talked to the Department of Wildlife, and I have letters to the Fish and Wildlife as well. They don't do any inspections. They don't come out and do any summary of anything. They just have rules and lines on a piece of map. Our properties are wetlands. They go 300 feet across the road, just like the river goes 300 feet to the center of that property. Our properties are wetlands. They need to be protected. And the other thing is the $7 million highway that you're gonna put down there to replace a single lane bridge. So that's $7 million. I divided it by 382. I'm a little off, but that's $18,000 per affordable home. They put that up in take that number away and put affordable housing on dry land. That's where housing should be. And I also want to say too, is that the trustees said they would look at somewhere around 220 homes when they had the last trustees meetings, and their master plan was denied. They said they wanted 220s. What do these guys do? Come in with 324 or 344? That isn't 220. And so I just want to say, I'd like you to turn down this proposal and think about the fact that, just like we've been talking about, this is the jewel of the center of this valley, in the center of this city. You don't have this kind of land and wildlife that exists there naturally anywhere else in Berthoud. And so I'm over. That's what I like to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Charlotte Rowe. Charlotte Rowe.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Charlotte Rowe, we live at 1621 South County Road 13 in Berthoud. We're about 2.5 miles from the property in question. And I just want to say that my huge impression is that in looking at this plan, the planners kind of looked at small things to check off a criteria, and they ignored some big things, some really big things that can't be omitted. The value of a river. This river, it's the Little Thompson River. It feeds into the Big Thompson, but it's really more vibrant than the Big Thompson. It's a rolling, vibrant river, and there's nothing like it. I agree with all of those who said there's nothing like it in Larimer County. Just south of the town, an incredible teeming with wildlife, visitors and those who live there. You know, one of the rare species is the boreal toad. We have one on our property, which is south of there and south elevation, but there are now 2 of them this year, and they pop up, you know, every once in a while. They're very hard to get a picture, but that's just an example, and they're going to be crushed by this. But the value of this river valley to Berthoud and to the community is very hard to estimate. And the value of preserving Berthoud as a garden spot.
destroying the most beautiful part of this valley is, I don't think, where we want to go. I don't really think the developer, the applicant, would be proud of himself doing that. I think you can do better. The 2021 comprehensive plan emphasized proactive conservation, maintaining Berthoud's distinctive character, integrating public input. We're giving our strong input now, and we feel like this is a case where profit should not suppress a sustainable future for our community and a life for these amazing animals that they give joy to people. They make people's day and they make people's weeks. And this is a time in Colorado when the rate of development, it was estimated back in 2019, 2 football fields are being destroyed of our natural landscape per minute. It's much worse now. I think we can do better, a whole lot better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Okay, is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this issue tonight? With that, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Thanks to all those who spoke. So, Mr. Berthold, would you like to present any more information and answer some of the questions that we heard?
So I didn't hear really any questions. I heard a lot of comments about wildlife and you know, the river corridor, et cetera. So I don't have a lot to add. I, again, would be happy to address any questions or concerns that you might have. But I didn't hear anything in the public testimony that I hadn't already addressed, or the CPW or planning staff hadn't already addressed. But again, happy to address any questions or.
I do have one question, I'm sorry I didn't
Sir,
get
you
to
can't, so
ask
you're not
it.
allowed to, if public hearings.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I left a little early and I forgot.
You're okay. I do have a question.
Yeah.
And I did hear, I think it was Mr. Hirschman that talked about the houses being too close. The house would be too close to the floodplain or near the floodplain?
I think the comment, if I remember correctly, was a concern about how close they were to the wetlands that are on the properties to the north. And I don't believe that's the case. So I believe we're meeting all of the required setbacks to the wetlands to the north.
Staff, do you have any comment about that? Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, we do not have any wetlands on this particular property. When the applicant needs to improve County Road 6C, they will have to go through all of the permitting process that's required. If there are any designated wetlands, they'll have to get the appropriate permits.
And that's a fair point. I think there are some designated wetlands that are in the roadway swale on the north side, in particular of County Road 6. And to Planner Johnson's comment, we will have to address that with the Army Corps. And depending on what the size of that total impact is, we may have to do some mitigation. I don't believe that will be the case. It's relatively narrow, but we'll go through all the required permitting at that time.
So just a question, because someone had mentioned affordable housing and the cost could be passed on to, like the road work and everything, to those who are purchasing these houses. What are you thinking as far as why these are affordable and in other words, pricing, and it's hard to do that right now because it's really a preliminary thing, but.
Yeah, so there was a couple of things in his comments that are not accurate. These are not proposed as affordable housing. Affordable housing is a very specific definition based on you know, median income and being a percentage of median income. So what we're proposing is a market-based project. And forgive me about the terminology, because I'm sure I'm not going to get it right, but there is a target that the town is trying to hit on attainable housing. And we believe a significant portion of these homes would be below that threshold. We think about 40% or so. The duplexes and townhomes in particular, we believe would be below that threshold of attainable housing, helping the town meet that goal in coming years. But these would not be considered to be affordable housing. That gentleman also stated a number on the cost of that road, which I'm not sure where that came from. We haven't costed it yet, but I guarantee it won't be that number. That's a,
Jim Suzak.
that's a number that's just not accurate. So, but that said, all of the infrastructure that is a requirement of this project will ultimately be borne by the residents that buy in this project. And that's part of the reason we're asking for a metropolitan district, is to help finance those improvements to, again, keep the price of that housing as low as possible, to help hit the market.
Commissioners, anything else that you wanted to ask?
No.
At this point? Thank you, Mr. Mercer.
Yeah, thank you.
This point in the process, the commissioners will deliberate about, we're first going to talk about the annexation request. And with that, I would ask Director Johnson if she would show us the criteria for approving or recommending approval of for annexation. I think that's on which page? It's also in our packet.
Would you like the full report or the condensed version that has the 3 items, the 3 processes on the one slide?
I'd like to see the full, unless you all can condense one, this would be easier for you to read.
No, the full one's fine.
Yeah, the full one would be
We'll do
great.
it
Okay.
next time.
We'll go through them all. Okay. All right, so, yeah, I think also in our packet on pages 5 and 6. Just want to make sure we're on this, so folks can follow along with it. All right, so the first criteria for recommending approval to the town board is that annexation is a discretionary act, with the exception of petition initiated by the town for the annexation of an enclave. The town board shall exercise its sole discretion in annexation territory to the town. I mean, I don't see what there really is there to discuss. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
okay, the applicant willingly provided the information.
Yep.
So, all right, the second is the land to be annexed and the uses proposed for the land shall conform to the goals, policies, and strategies of the Town of Berthoud Comprehensive Plan and to the land uses depicted on the preferred land use map as amended. Furthermore, all annexation proceedings shall comply with the Colorado Municipal Annexation Act of 1965 as amended. Comments about that criteria?
I think that the proposed uses do conform with the goals of the comprehensive plan. I think a lot of the feedback that we're hearing during the public testimony is that the comprehensive plan doesn't go far enough in protecting natural resources in this region. But to the extent that it conforms with the comprehensive plan, I think the answer is yes.
Do we have a consensus about that?
Yes.
All right, let's look at number 3. At the time development occurs, certain public facilities and amenities are necessary and must be constructed as part of any territory annexed to and developed within the town in order that the public needs may be served by such facilities. These facilities include, but are not limited to, arterial streets, bridges, public parks and recreation areas, water and sanitary sewer facilities, school sites, fire and police station sites, and storm drainage facilities. Typically, the annexation of lands to the town shall be shown not to create any additional cost burden on the then existing residents of the town to provide such public facilities in any newly annexed area. Comments about criteria 3?
I think they meet that. They've already acknowledged that whether this is in the county or the city, the town is going to be providing those services. I think also the applicant has provided some public parking at their own expense to potentially enjoy the park area, not just the neighborhood itself. And obviously, the burden of any improvements would be put on their proposed metro district if this is approved.
I think it meets that criteria.
Everyone else? Good? Okay, so consensus that it meets this criteria for number 3. Let's then go to number 4, criteria 4. Typically, the petitioner for annexation shall be responsible for paying application fees and the town's full cost for processing the annexation applications and petition from initial discussion with town staff before submittal of the petition through the approval and recording of the final annexation documents. I think staff has told us that they have paid their fees and have been responsible for that.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're in consensus that they meet that one, Mr. Brody? Great. All right. That takes us to criteria 5. Annexed areas will not typically divide tracts of land to prevent further annexation of adjoining parcels. For example, leaving a gap or a strip of land between property to be annexed and the adjoining property.
I think there's a strip of land, but that's to give more space potentially or buffer to the town's, whatever we're calling that area to the south, right? And also the other original farmhouse, that keeping that as a separate parcel so it can't be then subdivided in the future, I think creates that buffer that you're wanting, so.
Yes.
Consensus? All right, so we believe that that criteria is also met. Criteria number 6, the property shall comply with the annexation application requirements of this chapter prior to submitting an annexation petition.
Yes.
That's what we do.
Yes.
So then we have consensus that they have met criteria number 6. That's the end of it. So I think we have consensus that they have met all 6 criteria for recommending approval to the town board. So with that, I would entertain a motion regarding the annexation request.
I move to make a recommendation of approval of the River Trails annexation to the Town of Board of Trustees. Planning Commission's findings are based on the criteria for approval found in section 30-8-102 of the Municipal Code as discussed in the staff report. The property is within the town's 3-mile plan and urban growth boundary, and the process found in Municipal Code section 30-8-104B.5.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
So Commissioner Smith made the motion and Commissioner Pond seconded the motion. Planner Hildebrand, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pond,
Yes.
Commissioner Brody,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Chair Anderson.
Yes. With that, the motion approved unanimously. Let's now move to consider the neighborhood master plan. Staff would please change the slide so that we have listed for everyone what the criteria is. What this criterion are. Okay, so let's begin with criteria 1. The land use mix within the project conforms to the Berthoud zoning district map and comprehensive plan preferred land use map and furthers the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Discussion?
I think it meets that criteria.
Mr. Pond believes it meets that criteria. Mr. Brody agrees.
I agree. I think I have a clarifying question for staff. So because the comprehensive plan isn't a legally binding document, what does that mean in the context of like interpreting its weight in the code?
Sure, so the comprehensive plan is the vision document. We took a look at what that envisioned area was seen. That's probably a weirdly structured sentence. So the 2024 future land use map, we looked at that. We also took a look at the future land use map from the 2021 comprehensive plan update. And looking at the densities for that, the comprehensive plan is a vision. It's a playbook, it's a work plan, it's a business plan on what the town and the citizens at that moment in time said that they can envision how the town is going to grow and what type of land uses they find appropriate on different properties. So while it's not legislative, it is a vision of what the town wants to see happen.
Thank you. And can you remind the commission and the audience of the public comment portion of the development of the comprehensive plan?
Yes, there were more than 2,000 participants in surveys. There were public outreach events, there were open houses, there were comprehensive plan, small group meetings. So there was quite a bit of public participation in that process. The plan also then came before planning commissioners in a public hearing. It also went before the town trustees in a public hearing. So it was, there was a very robust public hearing process and public engagement process.
Thank you.
And the plan took into consideration, the final plan took into consideration all of that stakeholder feedback to create the vision.
Yes, the vision, the goals, the objective statements were all taken from the public. Staff, I was not here at that time. It is common, and the town did do this at that moment in time, where a third-party consultant is hired so that the content in the comprehensive plan is neutral and is not influenced by staff. It is generated by the public that gets involved in developing that plan.
With that foundation, do we believe that criteria 1 has been met?
Yes.
Yes.
As well. All right, then let's go to criteria number 2. The neighborhood master plan represents a functional system of land use and is consistent with the rationale and criteria set forth in this chapter. The town comprehensive plan and the parks, open space, and recreation port plan as amended.
Yes, I think the size of the parks, the pocket park, the trail connections would all fall into the category of agreement with the port plan.
Do we have consensus
Yes.
about criteria 2? Okay, so we have consensus that criteria number 2 is met. Let's look at criteria number 3. The preliminary traffic, open space, park utility, and pedestrian design is adequate and functional given the existing and planned capacities of each system and meets the standards found in this code.
I would say, yeah, because it is preliminary, right? There's still gonna be some massaging to do as they go through the process. So I think from a preliminary standpoint, knowing what we know from a drawing, I would say yes.
And given the density that's been proposed compared to what would technically be allowed in a suburban residential area, well, given if it would be rezoned for that.
Thank you. I also feel the same way as Commissioner Brody, that this is very preliminary. We'll see more of this, and we can ask for more information about traffic, for example, if this does get to preliminary plat stage. So if when we use that word preliminary, you know, that really confines kind of what that criteria is. So I would agree that it probably does meet number 3. Commissioner
Yes.
Pond, do you agree? Okay. All right, so then we have a consensus that it does meet criteria 3. Let's look at criteria 4. Negative impacts on adjacent land uses have been identified and satisfactorily mitigated.
I think that, yeah, were you gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to note that I think this is probably the aspect of the code that warrants the most discussion
Agreed.
for this proposal. And so I would be curious in about having a discussion as a commission, whether there's anything within the legal bounds of the planning commission that we find necessary for approval beyond what has already been done by the applicant. Or reasons for saying that number 4 has not been met.
I know the last time we discussed this, we too had some concerns about the wildlife and wanted more information. Do we feel like that we have enough information to be able to appropriately evaluate number 4? I mean, that would be my first question.
I think we have more, opinions of, I'm not saying right or wrong, or this is a very difficult one to answer, obviously, I think, so. And, but if we look at it from the standpoint of negative impacts on adjacent land uses, it's not asking about negative impacts on wildlife or other things. Does this project negatively impact the use of the neighbor's land? And at this point, other than some talk about a wetland, which is, again, going to be addressed later on down the road, unfortunately, as much as I wish I could personally say that, looking at the wildlife is part of that, but that's not an impact on the use of their land, in my opinion, but I'm not a lawyer, obviously, so.
I would agree.
Adjacent land uses, I guess it depends on how we would define that. Think of that in terms of the code. But anyway, what the code prescribes as a land use there, whether.
Yeah, can we ask
Yeah.
staff, or I don't know if the town attorney is on for, no, okay,
So, let's ask staff, and I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
Would use of this land as wildlife be something that would be defined as part of the current uses, or even in suburban residential as a land use?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. What was your question?
The question we have, I think, is when in its criteria, it uses the term adjacent land uses, or land uses. Would the code, I haven't read it, this part of it recently to know, does it define wild use of areas like this that have wildlife as a use under it, or would it define that as being a use in suburban residential?
So, and wildlife officer Peyton also indicated that if you wanted to ask him how this could impact wildlife, he's also available to answer a question should you direct that to him. So land uses are in a municipality are different oftentimes than land uses in rural areas. Land uses in a municipality contemplate that they will be urbanized. So the negative impacts on adjacent lands are often looked at on how will property be used by the proposal, and how does that use impact the adjacent properties in their current state or even in a future state. So sometimes when a non-residential property is proposed, non-residential proposal is before the board or the commission, that impact can be seen on then what is that potential impact to the residential adjacent properties. So it is kind of a compatibility question between what is the proposed use and how does that negatively or positively or neutrally impact the surrounding area, as well as the potential growth in the future of that surrounding area.
So let's kind of encompass that, what's happening right now, existing sort of encompasses that.
But does the land use apply to only property owners or people adjacent to that land, I guess is where we're at?
Yeah, so land use is how the property is being used and how it's proposed to be used. And this particular item number 4 is adjacent. So the properties that are touching, how does this proposal, is there any negative impacts on those properties that are touching? So that adjacency.
Does the properties to the north on the other side of the road is considered adjacent because there's a road between those properties?
I would consider those adjacent, only separated by a road.
So to the extent that the properties to the north, for example, are being used as residential properties and farms, I don't think that this neighborhood, this proposed development would prevent them from being used as residential properties
Yeah.
for farms in the future.
And I would like to hear our wildlife experts' opinion about that. What do you think the impacts could be?
Yeah, so.
Do you want to stay with the podium? Thank you, sir. Just state your name again.
Yes, Peyton Felter, District Wildlife Manager here in the Berthoud area. So this housing development, theoretically, if it does get put in, it will push the wildlife off to adjacent properties. Now, with the Future Farmers of America's property, if they do choose to plant whatever crops they do plant, it is likely that they will experience negative impacts from this due to all the wildlife being forced to forage on their fields rather than also having this current property as an option. So, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife in that case is statutorily obligated to provide compensation for that as well. So, but it will push wildlife off of this property onto adjacent properties.
So possibly even the town of Berthoud's land as well.
Correct.
Questions, or we have our expert here?
No, I think it meets the criteria is my opinion.
Karen, to your point earlier about whether or not the applicant has met the request to provide enough information, do we feel we have enough information about the wildlife situation on this development? I'm wondering if you could comment on some of the neighbors' concerns that Colorado Parks and Wildlife isn't able to come out and investigate certain sites for, their ecosystem sensitivity.
Yeah, so we can come out and do some surveying and monitoring. We would, of course, have to have permission from the current landowner to do so. And if it is endangered species that are federally regulated, we would have to get the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service involved to do so.
So what you're saying is it's possible that there could be monitoring in the future if the landowner would permit it.
Correct. We would need landowner permission, CPW wise. Now, I can't speak for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so.
And it's fine if the answer to this is no, but do you have any knowledge of whether or not anyone has requested surveying on this property in the past?
I'm not sure on this property in the past or not. But if since the neighbors do believe that there are some endangered species here, we would need to get them in contact with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get that process in motion.
And Madam Chair, if I may, there was an ecological resources survey that was performed with this application, and that was done in accordance with the standards.
So have you ever seen or have you ever heard of a new development area where part of the covenants was agreeing to surveying or no? That sounds kind of wild, but.
There's been some applicants that would be in agreement with us or the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to conduct surveys before any construction begins, things to that extent. I know in this area, raptors is also a large concern. They do use that field to forage, so they would have that foraging area taken away. So it affects quite a few animals on the landscape.
Any other questions, commissioners?
I guess my question on crops was, that field always hasn't been in crops. At some point in time, it was whatever it was naturally, right? And the animals that use that area have adapted to farming essentially, right? And so, I guess I was trying to get at is farming creates, potentially, I guess, some more viewable area, but there's still a side effect to wildlife, to agriculture as well. And so that's what I was trying to kind of get at with that, but.
Yeah, so, my apologies for not asking for clarification on that, but, as for farming, there is some disturbance, like as you are planting crops, or you could be cultivating it to plant a new crop. But those crops can also provide habitat for smaller animals such as mice, rabbits, and then you could also have coyotes, foxes feeding on that, and larger raptors can also feed on not only the mice and the rabbits, but they can also feed on the fox and the coyotes. So it has
The elk enjoyed whatever was being planted there.
exactly the elk, deer frequent the area as well. So
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, sir, again.
thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, let's get back to criteria 4. Are we satisfied that there's no negative impacts on the adjacent land uses?
When it comes to the use of their property, I would say they've addressed those questions.
I'm
We could,
satisfied I'm satisfied that they've been mitigated as best they can.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I'm trying to think carefully about this because I do appreciate and empathize with the concerns that have been raised during the public testimony about wanting to preserve for the future of the town these kinds of ecosystems and the character of this area. And I definitely understand that it can be frustrating to feel caught up in the legalese and technicalities that go along with the criteria review. And so I'm trying to think carefully about whether there's anything that we could suggest additionally to help mitigate these impacts that have been raised.
That's kind of where I'm at too.
Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way. Is there something else that we can do? Is it, or that can be done? that would
But I
help
will make the
mitigate?
point, before we go much further, that I do appreciate what the applicant has done already to respond to these concerns in terms of dramatic changes in the density and buffer zones and the setback from the river. I think that these are all meaningful changes that were not necessary given the bounds of the criteria, but have made a difference in terms of their willingness to work with the community and the town.
And I too appreciate those efforts. I think it was wonderful that you took those steps forward, Mr. Ritzel, to try to mitigate some of these issues. So, thank you for that. But I'm still kind of stuck in between that rock and a hard place. But is there anything else we can do? I feel better about that if I think about this being used as an educational area as well. If, for example, the park is more educationally geared so that the area and the trails are made so that people can learn more about the wildlife and this in the river area and that kind of thing. Because I think then you're mitigating some of anything that could possibly or something that could possibly be a negative impact. But
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be interesting to have a suggestion on including educational information in the park.
And then also educating people about wildlife that's there, and that, you don't go up and feed these animals,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, about,
How to protect the wildlife
Yes.
that may inevitably pass through this
yes,
area.
how the wildlife should be protected and appreciated, that kind of thing.
Do other commissioners have thoughts on that?
Any of that? Do we have consensus one way or another about this particular criteria? I know this is a tough one.
I'm fine with it.
I do think the condition has been met,
I-
and I think that when we come to the actual motion, I would be interested in some language around,
As would I, some
Yeah,
conditions.
yeah.
So, all right, so I'm gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have consensus about number 4, but we are gonna carefully consider some conditions with this particular, with the neighborhood master plan. Okay, so let's go then to criteria 5. There is a need or desirability within the community for the development, and the development will help achieve a balance of land use and or housing types within Berthoud according to town goals.
yes.
Yeah, I think the desirability goes back to the master plan and within the community, and that the community input was taken to develop that.
It looks like we have the required diversity of housing types here too, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have
Yes.
consensus? We have consensus that criteria number 5 is met. Now with that, our next step would be to make a motion for recommendation to the town board. Do we want to condition any motion on specific things?
I think that it's a great idea on the educational piece to the park, and I don't see that as a massive impact to the developer or Hotspur, and to, have signage and some educational placards that at a minimum that kind of explains like, this is who your furry neighbors are. And, so I'd be interested to see if the developer would be interested in looking at that.
I mean, the park, this is just like an idea, not a recommendation per se, but the park could even include like specific viewing areas for
Exactly.
wildlife that have things like, telescopes and, areas that,
And information about what to do and not to do there so that we can encourage the wildlife to be able to use that as their habitat. Is that something, Mr. Birdsall, would you mind coming back to the podium?
Yeah, I may not have heard everything you guys were saying, but Ann and I were just working on a potential condition that might address your concern. So I don't know if maybe Ann could read what we came up with.
The applicant shall work with town staff to incorporate educational opportunities regarding wildlife, river ecosystems, agriculture, and heritage of the area in their neighborhood identity features with the preliminary plats.
And maybe, I don't know what the wording is for this, not being a wildlife expert, but how do you say to have people appropriately interact or not interact with the wildlife?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear everything that you were saying at the end of that.
I mean, I don't know what the words are here, but how do we add something that would basically say that we would like to see some education about how people appropriately interact and don't interact, I guess, with wildlife?
So I think that is probably maybe a given in if we do educational opportunities regarding wildlife, river ecosystems, agriculture, and heritage on being respectful of those elements would be part of what you would want to convey in those educational opportunities versus encouraging people to interact in an inappropriate way. So I think we're gonna get it by just saying incorporating those educational opportunities and I think that will cover it, because we will not obviously allow Mr. Birdsall to put signs up that are encouraging people to do something inappropriate.
I think,
So,
yeah, and I think what
Yeah.
Chair Anderson is maybe referring to is when you visit, comparisons were
Yes.
drawn to like Rocky Mountain National Park. Like when you
Yeah.
visit a park like this, there is specific signage that says
tells
like,
you-
don't
Oh,
approach the
yes.
elk, don't walk in this
Yes.
particular
Don't
area
feed
because,
these animals,
yeah,
don't do
yeah,
these things.
that sort of thing.
So I think that that's understood, that definitely we would have something like that.
And if it helps, we have a consultant on our team called Cedar Creek Associates who specializes in these sorts of things: ecological characterization, analysis, interpretive signage, and they're the expert in our opinion in Northern Colorado. So we will work with them and obviously work with staff and CPW if they're interested to come up with the right messaging. And I think what you guys are suggesting makes a ton of sense. So we're all about it.
Yes, and staff has heard what the concerns are, and it's part of the public record, so we'll make sure that it's hard to write a full.
Right, I hear you. I just see that if this is, that this could be very educational for our community, even some of our school children to be able to go there, maybe eat lunch, be taught some things about wildlife, about the history of the area, about the river. It just seems to make
Or do
sense.
that and not develop. That's a thought.
So, all right. So,
And it might help, and you guys obviously know this, and you mentioned it even tonight, this plan would be back in front of you, assuming we do get annexed with a preliminary plat. So you can see what we came up with at that point and obviously weigh in and shape it at that point as well, so.
thank you. Are there any other conditions, commissioners, that you're thinking about before we make a motion? Anything else?
No.
Okay, so I think we're gonna make a motion, we'll probably need that wording. Thank you, Lynn.
As soon as paper.
Okay. Who's gonna make the motion? All right, so at this time, I would entertain a motion regarding the River Trails Neighborhood Master Plan. I know there's a lot of people.
I move to make a recommendation of approval of the River Trails Neighborhood Master Plan to the Town Board of Trustees. Planning Commission's findings are based on the criteria for approval found in section 30-6-106 of the Municipal Code as discussed in the staff report, with the condition that the applicant shall work with town staff to incorporate educational opportunities regarding wildlife, river ecosystems, agriculture, and heritage of the area in their neighborhood identity features of the plat.
So is there a second? So Commissioner Smith made the motion, Commissioner Brody seconded the motion. Please take a roll.
Commissioner Brody,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffmans,
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Pond.
Yes.
Okay, so unanimous vote in favor of a recommendation as stated in the motion and the condition. Okay. Now let's turn to the rezoning request. Could we get the criteria for rezoning on the screen? It is on page 12 of the staff report. Rezoning is accomplished through a zoning map amendment. An amendment can't be made unless it addresses one or more of the criteria stated in the code. Again, as listed on page 12 of the staff report. So the question before us is, does the rezoning request meet any of the 5 criteria? So let's go through them one by one. Number 1, to correct a manifest error in an ordinance establishing the zoning for a specific property. No. To rezone an area or extend the boundary of an existing district because of changed or changing conditions in particular area, in a particular area or in the town generally. Really?
I guess what is a changing condition? Is that the need for additional housing? I mean, that's what I think it's a little nebulous.
Director Johnson, how would you define that?
So a change in condition could be the act of annexation, where it currently is an unincorporated Larimer County and it is now moving to the town of Berthoud. So a change in condition, again, would be the act of annexation.
Consensus that we think yes on that one then? Commissioner Pond?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we say that we feel that it meets number 2, so you only need 1, unless you just want to go through the other 3. Have a backup. Okay, so let's go through the next 3. The land to be rezoned was zoned in error and as presently zoned is inconsistent with the policies and goals of the town comprehensive plan. No. The number 4, the proposed rezoning is necessary to provide land for a community-related use that was not anticipated at the time of the adoption of the town comprehensive plan, and the rezoning will be consistent with the policies and goals of the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
That's,
So that's the backup. All right, let's do number 5. The area requested for rezoning has changed or is changing to such a degree that it is in the public interest to encourage development or redevelopment of the area. So do we think yes on that one?
Yeah.
Yes, backup 2. Commissioner Pond? Stay
I,
here.
I don't know that it meets that, but there's already one, at least one that it may.
Yes. So we believe then, let's then, if we all can't have consensus on 5, let's say no, if that's all right. Then let's say it meets 2 and 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I will, at this point, then I would entertain a motion on the rezoning request.
I'll make a motion. I move to make a recommendation to approval of the Town Board of Trustees for the referral zoning request to SR Suburban Residential from AG Agriculture in accordance with the 2021 Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map. The process of the approval found in the Municipal Code 30-8-104.b.5, and the criteria for approval is found in Section 30-3-107.d of the Municipal Code as discussed in the staff report.
I second it.
Okay, so Commissioner Brody made the motion and Commissioner Pond seconded the motion. Planner Hildebrand, could you please take the roll?
Commissioner Hoffmans,
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Brody,
Yes.
Commissioner Pond,
Yes.
and Chair Anderson.
Yes, motion passed. No opposed and no abstentions. Okay. All right, so that concludes our review of this land use matter. I want to thank everyone who came out today to speak with us about it. And also with our applicant for some of the concessions that they made as well. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the staff reports. I have any staff reports, Director Johnson, Planner Hildebrand, and do you want to introduce everyone to Bella again?
So everyone, this is our new planner, Bella. She's for how many weeks?
4th week.
4th week.
4th week,
It's
wow.
flown by.
Last name, Bill, told me before and I can't remember. Manza. Manza. So, welcome.
Thank you, glad to be here.
And the next planning commission will be on June 26th. And there will be a public hearing for a land development as well as the every 6-month comprehensive plan report card and a housing diversity action plan report card as well.
That is the one I unfortunately will not be here.
I may be gone I think I'll be back as I'm trying to catch a flight early that morning.
Okay.
So, but I will let you know ahead of time.
If you all will let me know, because it is a land use hearing, and then we continue it if we don't have quorum. Thanks. And that's it for the staff report.
That's any reports, commissioners, that we should know?
Will you have a new person on your staff that we haven't been introduced to yet, right?
Bella.
Bella, yes.
You missed
Yes.
it.
You introduced her at the Board of Trustees, but not for us.
Oh, Ton just introduced her.
Okay.
Yeah, Bella has experience in California, and then she is also will be the staff liaison for the Historic Preservation Advisory Council. And she has a lot of project management experience, and we're very lucky to have her, and so far she has been a great fit to the team.
Yay.
Thank you. Well, and you'll get to know all of us from these meetings. Look forward to it. Sounds great. All right, anything else, commissioners? Anything else you want to report or? Nope.
Thank you very much, Peyton, for your
Yes,
presence.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's very
Yeah,
helpful. Not like you want to spend your evenings with these things, right?
It's part of the job.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your dedication. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second?
I second.
So Commissioner Brody made the motion and Commissioner Hoffman seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Excuse me.
Thank you for the policeman